City Commission of the City of Brownsville in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, would convene a regular meeting on Tuesday, April 19, 2022 at 5 p.m. in the City Commission chambers, located on the second floor of the Brownsville City Hall Old Federal Building, located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street, Brownsville, Texas. Pursuant to Chapter 551.127 Texas Government Code, one or more commissioners or employees may attend this meeting remotely using video conferencing technology. The video and audio feed of the video conferencing equipment can be viewed and heard by the public at the address posted above as the location of the meeting. Members of the public, employees, and the City Commission may join via the WebEx teleconference meeting link provided at the City of Brownsville Agenda Center. This notice and meeting agenda were posted online at the City of Brownsville Agenda Center. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting hosted through WebEx could also join by the phone numbers provided on the agenda. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. I have Mayor Mendez present in person, Commissioner Cowan present in person, Commissioner Galansky present in person, Commissioner De Los Santos present in person, Commissioner Gowan present in person, Commissioner Tetro present in person, and Commissioner Cardenas present in person. So, Mayor, we have a quorum, and you can call the meeting to order.
Let's all stand for the prayer and remain standing afterwards for the pledge to the flags. Father God, we thank you once again for the many blessings that we have in the city of Brownsville. And as we contemplate our greatest blessing, that during this season where we just celebrated the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ for our sins so that we can be with you in eternity, Lord, help us to consider those that are less fortunate, to be able to reach out with the love of God to each person. Lord, we ask you to keep us unified. And Lord, for this meeting today, we ask you to lead and guide our mayor, our city commission, everyone who's presenting anything for the very best for the city of Brownsville. And we ask all of these things in the name of your precious Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. And now we'll have a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what has already been spoken. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
This past weekend was Passover. It's also Ramadan, and it was the Cambodian Independence Day. So in the interest of celebrating all religions, happy Passover and Ramadan and everything else.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Our next item is proclamations. The first proclamation is proclamation designating Monday, April 25th, 2022 as Parental Alienation Day in the city of Brownsville, sponsored by Commissioner De Los Santos and Mayor Mendez.
Thank you. This is a proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, designating Monday, April 25th, 2022 as Parental Alienation Day in the city of Brownsville. Whereas parental alienation syndrome is when one parent makes every effort to turn the couple's children against the other parent, as coined by in the 1980s by child psychiatrist Dr. Richard A. Gardner. And whereas the most common symptom of children affected by parental alienation syndrome is their severe opposition to contact with one parent and/or overt hatred towards such parent when there is little and often no logical reason to explain the child's behavior. Whereas these behaviors, such as speaking negatively about a parent to or in front of a child, interfering and denying communication and visitation, and discussing inappropriate information with the child, such as the details of the marriage or separation, financial matters, court proceedings, or functional matters, or manipulating and even coaching a child to lie, can not only destroy the bond between a loving parent and child, but can cause mental and emotional harm to the child. And whereas parental alienation is a form of child abuse and considered harmful to children, as the alienating tactics are confusing, frightening, and rob children of their sense of security. Professionals agree that the problem of parental alienation is damaging to children and can affect them into adulthood with tragic consequences. And whereas with awareness comes education and understanding and the power to stop the detachment of innocent children who become victims of families destroyed, and the power to stop the abuse of innocent children caught in the crossfire of people who they love. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the Charter of said city, do hereby declare Monday, April 25th, 2022, as Parental Alienation Day in the City of Brownsville, and hereby urge all residents to show their support on this day to increase public awareness and enhance prevention efforts toward parental alienation and the effects that it can have on children and families. Done on this 19th day of April 2022 by myself and the City Commission. Thank you.
Mayor, I believe there's someone here on this proclamation.
Okay, very good. Somebody here on this?
Honorable Mayor, Madam Commissioners, Mr. Commissioners. I'm here to advocate against parent alienation. Let me tell you my story briefly. I have made 3 Child Protective Service reports in which I was told I cannot do anything until my daughter physically hurts herself. There are visible abusive physical marks, or attempt suicide. I have made approximately 100 police child custody dispute reports so far. I have fired 2 attorneys and am on my 2nd judge. Now, I am going into the 4th year having to fight for my possessional visitation right to spend quality time with my daughter. I cannot speak on what I'm going through because I am still having court hearings. I conversed with my daughter before sending this proclamation to various governmental entities. I spoke with her first because of the exposure it might give her. I love my daughter. My daughter knows my intense passion I have for my career. She knows I am taking the buck stops with me approach. This type of child abuse has to stop with her, or at least slow down. Every day there are adults who are victims of parent alienation, who destructively spiral out of control or commit suicide. I thank God for being emotionally and spiritually strong. Every day there are adults who were once children, who went through parent alienation and now sabotage their lives with devastating and unhealthy behaviors. I have met these types of adults who wish things were different back then, and encourage me to fight. Every day there are children whose dreams are destroyed because of an immature parent. I have witnessed my daughter have 3 mental breakdowns and heard her over the phone mentally break down. There is no law against, excuse my language, sucky as parent. There should be. I have worked on 2 resolution bills that modify the Texas Family Code and hope I get courageous state representatives or senators to sponsor them. There's resolutions. I thank you for partaking in this small action that can cause a ripple effect. Thank you for being a pebble casted onto a vast body of water. I challenge you to read into parent alienation. And when you get to the heart-wrenching parts, do not flinch. Keep reading. Let us use all our available resources. And if we are lacking a resource, let us not cower. Let's get it and use it. When you hear a parent not allowing the child to be part of the other parent's life, stand up for that child. His or her dreams depend on it. Besides, how old does a child have to be for a parent to support his or her dreams? How old should a parent, an adult, be in order to follow his or her dreams? Who has the right to destroy a child's dream? By this time, my daughter should have been part of the girls' national soccer team. Thank you.
Our next proclamation is a proclamation recognizing the 100th anniversary of Rutledge Burgers during the month of April 2022 in the city of Brownsville, sponsored by Commissioner De Los Santos and Commissioner Cardenas.
A proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, recognizing the 100th anniversary of Rutledge Hamburgers during the month of April 2022. And I know we have several folks in the audience here to support this initiative. If you guys would like to stand while I read the proclamation, please feel free. Whereas Rutledge Hamburgers opened its doors and has been serving the community since 1922 and is one of the oldest established businesses and which remains open until today, and whereas Rutledge Hamburgers has persevered through times of economic prosperity and hardship in our community through the Great Depression, World War II, the Great Recession, foreign currency devaluations, and other economic calamities. And whereas Rutledge Hamburgers evolved from its humble beginnings as an open-air alleyway vendor between two buildings on Washington Street, and later as a modest enclosed establishment to later become a unique landmark, and whereas Rutledge Hamburgers has remained true to its authenticity by continuing to cook their hamburgers on the same antique grill as when it first opened, delivering a hamburger that has maintained its celebrated taste throughout the years. And whereas in 1995, when it came time to pass the torch, Rutledge Hamburgers was sold to Gloria Perez, a Rutledge employee who has continued the legacy, tradition, and dedication to serving the Brownsville community up until now, the centennial celebration. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the charter of said city, and on behalf of all of our citizens, do hereby celebrate Rutledge Hamburgers' 100th anniversary in the month of April 2022, and further call upon the residents of Brownsville to celebrate the unique cuisine, authenticity, legacy, tradition, and heritage that Rutledge Hamburgers has offered to Brownsville and the Rio Grande Valley during the last 100 years. Done this 19th day of April 2022. Gilbert, or anyone, if you'd like to come up and invite the commission to the celebration you all are planning, please feel free.
You should have brought us cheeseburgers.
Gracias.
Sí, claro.
A ustedes.
Thank you.
Our next proclamation is proclamation designating the month of April 2022 as Autism Awareness Month in the city of Brownsville, sponsored by Mayor Mendez and Commissioner Cowan.
Sure, I'll read. This is a proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, designating the month of April 2022 as Autism Awareness Month. Whereas autism or autism spectrum disorder refers to a range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication, as well as by unique strengths and differences. And whereas autism affects individuals and families on every continent and in every country. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates autism's prevalence as 1 in 44 children in the United States. This includes estimates of a male to female ratio of 4 to 1. And whereas CDC data suggests that autism is 1.6 times more likely to be diagnosed among white children compared with Hispanic counterparts, and is 1.9 times more likely to be diagnosed in Black children compared to Hispanic children. And whereas raising a child with autism can introduce physical, emotional, social, and financial challenges to families. In addition, an estimated 2.2% of adults in the United States are autistic. Early detection is key to the development of a child, so families may seek out the resources and support to provide their children a normal, happy, and healthy life, since autism is a lifelong neurodevelopmental condition. And whereas the City of Brownsville is a family-friendly community that recognizes the vital role parents play in shaping the lives of our children and the destiny of our community. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the Charter of said city, and on behalf of all citizens, do hereby designate the month of April 2022 as Autism Awareness Month, and further encourage the citizens of Brownsville to support autism awareness and acceptance to foster a more inclusive and compassionate community, and to light it up and wear blue to promote and enhance autism awareness. Done on this, the 19th day of April 2022, Mayor Mendez and the City Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we had a family who was going to receive this proclamation. Would y'all come up? Welcome. Would you like to say anything? Go ahead, please.
I'm floored. All I can say, of course, thank you to the commissioners and the mayor. But as I'm listening to the first proclamation that was brought up, and I guess the key to it would be communication. But more than that, the challenges that all parents face in our city, specifically your most vulnerable population, which is, of course, parents with autistic children. I would say just the community is the key to everything. I am reminded, as I see people that are here in this audience, of the support that my daughter, my family, and everyone around us has received throughout the years. But more importantly is how that communication and that community continues to bind and fold itself into just the success that now my daughter is a recipient. And she is just one example of, I guess you could say, don't underestimate them. Don't place them in a box and tell them that, oh no, they're not possible to do. I'm reminded of one instance as my daughter was going to Pigskin when she was a sophomore in Hannah. She opened up her fortune cookie, and her fortune cookie read something like, biggest pleasure in life is doing those things that people say you can't do. She went on to march in that competition as one of many bands that are part of our district. But what's reminded of me is that going up that road and the difficulties that she faced, what embraced her, what always was with her, aside from the support of her family, of course, were the wonderful people that are here today, from Dr. Cuff, to, of course, the superintendent, to the countless teachers, administrators, and so many other people that to this day, of course, now trickle down over to the City of Brownsville, commissioners, mayors, and of course, Ms. Ledesma, who's sitting over there as the representative, who embraces, of course, all children that have these shortcomings as far as economical and social and so forth, and that you have this wonderful center as revival of cultural arts that services our city and that continues to make these children succeed. So I'm just, my heart is so full right now. Thank you so much. I wasn't expecting that. I thought we were just, okay, we're just going to clap and that's it. But thank you so much. This is a great honor. And if we represent what we represent, I'm very honored to represent it. Of course. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here, and Dr. Gutierrez and everyone else. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Y'all can come up here if you'd like. Just come through one of the... Sure. Welcome.
Commissioner Cowan and Commissioner Gowan, if y'all could stand. Oh. Everybody else comes out. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank y'all.
Our next item, oh, I'm sorry.
Something brief but extremely important, and that is, of course, a testament and recognition to your officers, to your fire department, which prompted my daughter to tell me, Mom, they recognized us by placing the icon of autism on their badge. Police officers, much respect to you. As so did the fire department, who placed it on their Facebook and said something that touched my heart, that said something along the lines of, when all pieces fit, or something along the lines. Thank you very much for protecting this most vulnerable population and, of course, to our citizens. I really just didn't want to leave without saying that, because that's what prompted us, of course, to really approach the city and tell them, don't forget your most vulnerable population. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is our public comment period. Our first public comment form was received from Dina Nunez.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Dina Núñez, soy organizadora con Border Worker United. Estoy aquí para pedir su apoyo, ¿verdad?, en contra de una ordenanza en contra del robo de salario para los trabajadores de Brownsville. Yo organizo y educo a los trabajadores a conocer sus derechos laborales, enfocándonos en prevenir y combatir el abuso laboral, el robo de salario y luchar por un salario justo. Nos aliamos con grupos que abogan por derechos laborales de los trabajadores, dando talleres para informar sobre sus derechos. No somos abogados, pero en ocasiones presentamos reclamos de robo de salario. Nuestras estadísticas nos dicen que 1 de cada 5 trabajadores sufre robo de salario. Nos apoyamos en las leyes del salario mínimo de Texas y nos capacitamos con agencias como Texas Workforce Commission, OSHA, COSH, Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, para poder tomar entrenamientos y ayudar a canalizar los casos de los trabajadores sobre abuso laboral y robo de salario. Las víctimas comúnmente son ciudadanos, residentes y comunidades migrantes de toda clase de trabajador. Como mencioné, no somos abogados, pero ayudamos al trabajador a documentar, preparar y poder dar referencia a la ayuda legal con Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid o con las cortes de reclamos pequeños. Nuestra petición es una ordenanza para poder contener el robo de salario y que beneficie el potencial y mejore la salud y el bienestar de los trabajadores de bajos salarios y sus familias aquí en la ciudad de Brownsville. Queremos prevenir el robo de salario con esta ordenanza por medio de crear un fondo y una agencia contra el robo de salarios. Queremos que mejoren los métodos de recuperación de salarios de los trabajadores al revocar los permisos de la ciudad, proporcionando embargos por salarios no pagados. Queremos que aumenten las multas y las sanciones administrativas a empleadores que cometen robo de salario. Queremos una protección contra represalias cuando un trabajador denuncia un abuso de robo de salario. Queremos también que se supervise el cumplimiento de una ordenanza como tal. Queremos que se reporten todas las violaciones de robo de salario a agencias que hacen cumplir las leyes laborales, ¿verdad?, de aquí de Texas. Esta es mi petición, ¿verdad?, ante el mayor y los comisionados por el trabajo que hacemos con nuestra comunidad, que han aumentado mucho los casos, ¿verdad?, de robo de salario y no sabemos más qué hacer, ¿verdad?, sino que detener esto por medio de una ordenanza. Muchas gracias.
Our next public comment form was received from Sylvia Castaño.
Sí. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Silvia Castaño y soy presidenta de la mesa consejera de la Border Workers United. Junto con Dina trabajamos organizando y educando a nuestra comunidad por medio de talleres laborales. El Paso, Texas se ganó una ordenanza contra el robo de salarios en el 2015, siendo un éxito, ya que minimizaron los casos de robo de salario, Por esa razón, nosotros estamos pidiéndoles ante ustedes, ya que Bronzeville es la ciudad más grande del valle y sería bueno se apruebe esta ordenanza para proteger a nuestros trabajadores. Actualmente, como decía mi compañera, de cada 5 trabajadores, 1 sufre de robo de salario. De esa manera seríamos un ejemplo a seguir por otras ciudades del valle. Muchas gracias por su atención brindada y Dios los bendiga y siga dando guianza en toda la toma de decisiones para mejoras de nuestra comunidad y ciudad.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Our next item is work sessions. Item 1, Brownsville Public Utilities Board rate adjustment. City Manager's Office.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Commissioners. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm here with Mike Perez, our CFO, and we have been talking with city staff, city manager, and individually with the City Commission on and off in March and April about some possible electric rate adjustments. And we want to make a short presentation tonight to the Commission, kind of summarizing what we've met with the Commission and staff on that. And then we do have a action item, first reading in the public comment or public hearing section tonight. And so I'll turn this over to Mike so we can go through the short presentation, and then we're prepared in the public hearing section to do a detailed presentation if the desire of the Commission. So, Mike.
Thank you, John. Honorable Mayor, city managers, I've got a short presentation here, so we're going to get started. We'll start off with the short background here. The City Commission approved the 5-year rate plan on December 17, 2012. The first rates went into effect April 1, 2013, and the last on October 1, 2016. The 5-year rate increases for electric totaled 36%, of which 14% represented ongoing growth, and 22% represents bond issuances for an electric generation plant. So it's important to note that the last 3 rate increases, 7, 8, and 7, totaled 22%. So a clean rate design option is to revert to the base rates after the second increase effective 10/1/2013. On here, we present a history of the Rate Stabilization Fund. On the top, we do show the funds budgeted towards the rate stabilization starting back in fiscal year 2014 all the way to fiscal year 2022. Total budgeted funds were $127,500,000, of which $36,705,380 came from surplus allocations, and $90,794,620 from revenues actually generated from bond issuance rates. Now, as you can see here, from fiscal year 2014 through 2016, we did generate some bond issuance revenue totaling $29 million that we actually set aside. It was to assimilate interest payments on the bonds during the construction period. And so those have been set aside in the plant fund, and they continue to be there untouched. So in addition to the budgeted allocations that are on top, BPUB did contribute an additional $18 million from surplus from 2016 to 2019. So overall, a total of $145,500,000 has been returned to our customers, $54,705,880 in surplus, and $90,794,620 in revenue that was generated through that bond issuance rates. Now, none of the bond issuance rate revenues were utilized to pay any of BPUB's O&M costs. Just a quick timeline here. Our BPUB board, back on February 14, 2022, approved a resolution requesting the city of Brownsville consider decreasing the electric base rates. And then on April the 13th, 2020, we did submit a request to set an agenda item for placement in the city's commission meeting tonight. We did hold some briefings with city staff and commissioners. On February 25th, we met with the city manager, Noel Bernal, and the city of Brownsville finance staff. On March 9th, we held another meeting with City Manager Noel Bernal and with our BPB Vice Chair, Patricia Sampaio. On March 28th, we started our one-on-one briefings with the City Manager and Commissioners Ray de los Santos and John Cowan. And then on March 29th, continued the one-on-one meetings with the City Manager, Commissioners Rose, Gowan, Pedro Cardenas, and Norris Kolaski. And today, this afternoon, we did hold a one-on-one meeting with City Manager and Commissioner Tetro. Some of the, here we listed just some of the commissioners' comments during the briefings that we held. Just to name a few, number one, there, a workshop between the City Commissioners and BPB Board should be transparent, look at energy needs for the future and strategize together. Even if our rates are higher than the IOU average, that's okay, as long as we are addressing future needs. That's more important. It's important to convey the message to the customers that even if rates go down, their bills will go up because we need to recover the full fuel cost. Another one, we shouldn't have used the TANASCA revenues for bill reduction. We should have set it all aside for generation. And the last one that I'll mention on here will be when do we expect the TANASCA audit to be complete? It would be to our advantage to bring up this rollback after the report is presented. And as you can see, there's a lot of other comments there that the commissioners did make. Here on this last page, we did identify some risk factors. One was a reduction in rates could negatively impact BPB's credit rating, leading to higher interest costs, meaning that we're going to pay higher interest costs in any future debt issuances. This was a concern that was brought up by our financial advisor and our engineering consultant that conducted the review. Second, the current high inflation could significantly affect material and equipment costs going forward. As a policy consideration, this reduction in rates limits future investment options for generation. If the base rates are not in place, we are limited to purchase power agreements, which are passed through costs to the customers anyways. So as a way to mitigate this risk factors, our financial advisor and engineering consultant did recommend a phased approach to the rate adjustments. They've recommended doing it over 3 years by reversing each of the last 3 years of increases, or this could also be accomplished in a shorter period of time if you all elect to do it over 6 months or so. So that concludes the presentation here during the work session. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I'm sorry. The recommendation that came from the PUB board was that of the percentage increase we saw, which is somewhere a little bit over 30%, that the rollback be about 18%. Is that right?
The review concluded that the reduction would result in about 18.3% of the gross revenues.
Okay.
But we are rolling back. It did recommend to roll back to 22% bond issuance.
Okay. And I guess the recommendation then would be to roll it back over the course of 2 to 3 years. Is that right then? Is that
That's an option to, can be done all at once or it can be done over time. I think our financial advisor and rate consultant suggested maybe a phased approach. In the event something were to occur in the system where we might need that funding, it would still be available. Some of it would still be available.
Okay.
But that's up to the commission.
Right, and gentlemen, I've been vocal about wanting to do this because I think it's the right thing to do, being that the project that it was initially meant for is a project that's not going to go forward. So I think it's been at least several years that we should have done this. I'm certainly in favor of doing it as quickly as possible. I think over a couple years is probably something that may work best for everyone, but I'm certainly not in favor of waiting any longer to do something like this. I think the ratepayers deserve the relief at this point. I know that we've started to adjust. We already adjusted the fuel costs, I believe, through our PUB board as well. So I think waiting any longer is something that's not fair to the ratepayers at this point. Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments from the commission?
Can I ask for clarification, though? So if you do roll back the rates back to 2013, will customers actually see a reduction in their monthly bill?
You're going to see a reduction in their base rate, but we will be setting the fuel factor component of the bill to actual cost. Where right now, we're subsidizing that through the rates that we'd be rolling back, which we won't have anymore. So we'll be forced to adjust that fuel component to the actual cost. We were talking today with Commissioner Tetro, and I said, last year before the major storm, gas was under $2 before the February event. Today, it's $8. So those costs continue to go up, even with the subsidy from those rates that we're doing now and subsidy from the PUB, we're not able to do it without raising the fuel factor on it. So the base rates would go back to that 22% lower. Fuel factor will probably come up to that rate, possibly higher, depending on the fuel cost.
So say, for example, the average household of 4 people uses, I'm going to just use an easy number, 1,000 kilowatts. If right now it's costing so much, how much less or more, or maybe it'll stay the same, will it be once the rates are rolled back? Just a simple.
Once the average electric bill for the 1,000 kWh user, right now, with the current rates in place and the FPEC being subsidized, is at $113.03. With the rollback, the base rates will go down, fuel will go up, the actual average bill will actually go up to $113.52. So it's about a 49-cent increase.
Okay. So technically, then, most people will probably see an increase to their monthly bill, based on that example.
Yeah, particularly that was based on probably $6 gas. That number, it's $8 gas today. So it's, gas could go down to $2 too, and then we're back to a lower number. So.
And for clarification also, the reason this is kind of important to discuss is I know that several months ago, y'all came to the PB board because the subsidy of the fuel rate was no longer sustainable based on the subsidy, the amount of subsidy, and the increased fuel cost. So the subsidy, as y'all presented it, was no longer sustainable and was not going to be sustainable. Therefore, the board for PUB did recommend to bring that fuel rate to what it actually is. Now, if the fuel rate goes down, then obviously the bill will go down as well. But I think the PUB board did feel that the fairest thing was to ensure that fuel rate was being charged at cost to the customers because that subsidy was really, as y'all presented it, no longer sustainable.
Right, that's correct.
And then just, I shared with some of my peers that Austin Energy, which is also a municipally owned electric company, they're having to raise their rates to cover the losses of last February of 2021's freeze. Do you foresee that being an issue? Because even though, in a way, PUB had a windfall, the cost of the gas was so high, it ended up being actually a negative. So do you foresee a hardship on PUB to try to cover that deficit, especially when the city got more money because of it?
Yeah, I'll let Mike respond to that, but I don't think so.
So under Winter Storm Uri, we actually ended up with a shortfall of $35 million. We did have a windfall, like you said. We had extra power to sell the market from Salish Ray Power Plant. It generated us about $122 million in those 4 days. But on the flip side, the cost of production to the customers were at $140 million. And so our board at the time elected not to encumber our customers, but rather use that windfall or those revenues that we generated from off-system sales to cover those production costs for the customers. And so we still ended up with a $35 million shortfall, which included the $10 million windfall that we transferred over to the city. Our board went ahead and then allowed us to issue commercial paper for those $35 million to make up that shortfall. And so we didn't pass any of those costs to our customers. Now, unlike some of the other customers upstate where they were seeing bills in excess of $20,000.
But where's the 35 million coming from? Because PUB's budget is about 200 million a year, so that's about a seventh of your annual budget. The money has to come from somewhere.
Right, and we issued that.
So does that mean a reduction in capital projects or?
Yeah, I mean, it was a reduction in our commercial paper program. And so we were here back on April the 5th and got approval from the board to go, the commission, I'm sorry, to go ahead and issue or convert that commercial paper to long-term debt. And so we're in the current process of doing that. So yeah, it just eliminated some of the use.
It was either do that through paying it off through cash or financing it, and our financial advisor, the best approach would be to finance it, keep our cash for CIP.
For CIP or any unforeseen circumstances in the future.
And my understanding is a lot of the utility providers throughout the state were in the same scenario where they did finance the deficits over time, right?
Yeah, some of them pretty serious.
Or they went bankrupt.
Or they went bankrupt, yeah. And a lot of those rate increases haven't occurred yet for those other utilities because they haven't financed it.
They're currently going to the securitization process. I believe they were supposed to issue bonds in June. And so at that point, they're going to have to factor in those costs for the additional debt service that they're going to have to pay and push it back to the customers.
If you look at our comparison, you'll probably see it in the session tonight, the updated one on the other utilities. How high their costs are going up is because they're starting to recover those costs of that winter storm year. And it's significant. It's very significant, which we're not going to have that in ours. We're going to have the fuel adjustment, but that's the only thing.
And John, did the fuel adjustment's already been made, is that right?
We've made it up to a certain point. The gas kind of stabilized. We're going to have to raise that up a little bit probably next month to cover the $8. We've been right around 4 or 5. Now it's up to 8. So we're going to have to make another small adjustment. Not significant, but a small adjustment.
John, if we'd had additional power to sell during the winter storm, was there a market for it? Was there a demand for it out there?
Yes, absolutely. That's where that 100 million came from.
In the time since then, have we made any significant improvements to our infrastructure to be able to weather something like that again in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to work on our Silas Ray plant. We just had that out of service for the summer, coming into the summer. And we're looking at some things maybe with the 29 million left over to put that into the plant and stabilize that plant and make that much more reliable. That's a peaker plant, so the cost of running that plant's expensive. But when you need it, it's cheap. So we don't run it very often unless we can sell it into the market at a profit we don't try to pass that one on to our customers. We use it as if people are short in the industry, we try to put that into the market at a higher, it'll come in at a higher price and we benefit from that. But it's a very reliable asset.
Good. With regard to the rest of the infrastructure in our grid here locally, I know I still hear from constituents who have problems with power outages, whether it's old lines, certain sections of town that just face challenges that others don't. It seems that there are still needs we need to address when it comes to our electrical infrastructure. How will passing this adjustment that's being proposed by the PUB board impact our ability to address those shortfalls?
Well, you're not going to have $16 million to use for them. I mean, it's bottom line. You're not going to have it, whether it's for generation or putting lines underground in subdivisions that are, that are in real bad shape. We're not going to have that. So, yeah, the answer to your question, there's more needs, even if it's not generation side, on the electric side, that money could be used for, put to good use. I mean, and we're just going to have to work around that. If we're not able to retain that, then we're going to have to work around it.
Thank you.
The infrastructure improvements, I mean, certainly that's the role of the PUB administration and the board to kind of come up with plans in their CIP and in other, within their budget. To to continue to do that and do it effectively, right? I think the PUB budget's somewhere a couple $100 million, but also it's important, and this is going to come up at some point before the PUB board, and I think we may need to address it at some point soon, is a point that was brought up that's missed sometimes, but I do recall that we did set aside the remaining surplus funds from this increase, which is 29 million, and that's still being held for future use. And I know that the concerns of the PB board so far has been, we don't want to just waste that money. We want to use it in a way that's going to benefit ratepayers going forward. So possibly infrastructure improvements and other generational capacity going forward is going to be the best use of that funding, but I guess we'll determine that soon.
Absolutely. It should stay on the electric side, particularly on the generation side. What I would recommend. I mean, that's what we collected it from the customers for. And customers I've talked to said, well, as long as it goes into that use, I'm fine with it, whatever it's for, but to use it for those projects. And that would be my recommendation. It'd stay with the electric system, preferably generation at the power plant or underground lines, things like that.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
Yes, I got two questions. If we were able to sell power back in February of last year, why were there so many homes without light?
What was that?
Why were so many homes without electricity if we were able to sell
We
power?
got curtailed by the ERCOT grid because of the shortage in the state. So we had to push that power off into the other areas and reduce our load, just like everybody else had to reduce their load. Because of some areas didn't have any. We might have had an abundance here. We did. Kind of crazy, but we did. But we were restricted on how much we could use for our customers.
And when we had our one-on-one, we saw a chart, I think it was a great chart that showed us when we do the rollback, what the prices would be. I think that's something we need to share so people understand where some of this money went. It's important for it to be real easy to read. And I think if we put it on a paper and we're able to share that, that would be great. I would love a copy of that.
Sure.
That presentation is part of the hearing item packet.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a question. Do you know what the current deficit is for our capital improvement plan for PUB? You know, the total amount of projects that you have on your table that you would like to fund?
Total?
Total.
Our five-year plan for the whole utility, electric, water, and wastewater, is at $270 million. $107 million of that is on the electric side, and $163 million on the water, wastewater.
And that's at today's prices, or is that on when it was approved?
The more than likely, they're going to have to be adjusted this next budget cycle because of inflation. So those will increase, definitely increase.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Our next item is Street Vendor Support Initiative, City Manager's Office.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Marina Solesi with the City Manager's Office. And tonight joining us for the Street Vending Initiative is Cristina Maria Patiño, Xochitl Cihuatl. She's the co-founder and visionary for Las Imaginistas, as well as Dr. Lynn Osgood, founding director of Civic Arts, adjunct professor for community planning at UT Austin, and Blanca Delgado, who is a Taller de Permiso community leader. So tonight we bring to you this work session. The goal of the Street Vending Initiative is to expand economic opportunity for our low-income micro-entrepreneurs and small businesses. The initiative will allow for another type of platform that would help bring in income, especially as there's financial impacts due to COVID-19. Part of the goal as well is review and reduce barriers that exist and as well as break down this initiative into 3 phases, which goes from near term to the longer term. So about the Taller de Permiso, the city worked with Las Imaginistas to explore processes that would allow for microeconomies to better serve the needs of our low-income residents. So the project titled Taller de Permiso used art as a tool to collaborate and imagine methods for sustainable economic opportunities. This work was highlighted by ICMA, which is the International City County Management Association, in a guide that was provided for city managers and staff on creative placemaking. So Christina is joining us virtually. Can you hear us, Christina?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay, great. She'll be covering more about this.
I first just want to give thanks to the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe and for their caretaking of the land where we're holding this meeting today as unceded territory of the First Peoples of this space. And also to say Haba Hata, Om Omateo, and Hechato Aho. We can move to the next slide where I'll share a little bit more about so this is from the guide that we were just speaking about, and then if we can move to the next one. Thank you. So this project has been in process for over 5 years. We began in 2017 with community engagement and research, and also collaboration with the city. We can go to the next slide. Our project has been a partnership with the Housing Authority, Equal Voice Network, now Voces Unidas, United Way, Carlotta Petrina, and Brownsville Wellness Coalition. Through this process, we've trained and engaged over 200 people over the last 5 years. Next slide, please. And we've used art making, capacity building, collaboration with the city, community input circles, vendor incubation programs, as multiple different entry points for community members to provide feedback and to help vision the work of this project. And next slide. And so we spent a full year on research. We spent 2018 then on our first piloting based on research. In 2019, we did testing with micro vendors on our project. And in 2020, we found this project to be incredibly important as so many people experienced financial hardship through COVID. So we did a vendor incubation program and got more input on how to develop the future of this project. Next slide. And I'm going to hand it over to Blanca now, who's going to speak about our community engagement and our work with vendors over the years.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So Taller de Permiso had multiple different strategies for the community capacity building, community listening, community visioning, and we trained more than 50 vendors in partnership with UTRGV Entrepreneurship and Commercialization Center. We supported numerous vendors in entering the farm market with new businesses. We also developed a community business leadership program with 8 vendors who received logo design and stipends to make basic purchases for their small business needs. Next slide, please. These trainings were especially meaningful for the community during COVID. Our program came right on time, as many community members suffered wage losses and family hardships. Their new businesses created an important thread of emergent income and network building. Our project has engaged nearly 200 community members over the last 5 years, and we see the real impact. Next slide. And just to share in some of the words that our vendors have shared with us based on the support that they received. One of them said, "These trainings have been so valuable. I never was able to go to college, and these trainings feel like I finally have had the chance, like someone is finally believing in me." Next slide. This program is helping me to celebrate my culture. Through my business, I can share with the community my pride and what makes us special. I have known I had a talent that I wanted to offer my community for so long, but it was just so hard financially to get started. This project gave me the support I needed to begin. And these are some of the thoughts that the vendors shared with us. And next slide, please. And I believe the following section would be led by Dr. Osgood.
So I don't see Dr. Lynn Osgood. Could you hear us, Doctor?
She's here. I can see her, but and she texted me. I'm not sure why it's not working.
Okay, so Dr. Lynn Osgood, what she was going to cover is the best practices in different communities. There's the Vancouver example where they piloted spatially bounded street vending. They used a lottery system to select vendors from that out of a pool of over 800 that they had. And that piloted a street vendors collective, so that was a peer managed group. The other example is from Chicago. And Lynn, if you can now speak, definitely let me know. If not, I'll go ahead and cover the next sections.
She texted me to say that she's having difficulty turning it on and off.
Okay. The next example is Chicago. The city of Chicago designated as special districts where they allowed vending. And the city's sidewalk vending program is managed by a third-party organization. So permitted operators are identified through an ID badge. The following example is New York City. 2009, the New York Center for Urban Pedagogy released an illustrated guide that helped out the vendors and helped navigate the regulatory environment from the city. And the last example, I believe, is Los Angeles sidewalk vending. And so City of LA approached this in 2 different stages. They first created the rules that were needed for the environment, and the second stage was to launch a permitting system. So currently, sidewalk vending is legal without permits, although the food-related permits are managed by the county and must be obtained. So those were some of the examples. This is the recommendation tonight is just a work session, but is to approach this in 3 phases. We looked at the different laws and codes that would impact this. There's the Texas Cottage Law, which allows for the sale of homemade foods by right in the state. And all what's needed from the individual is a food handler certificate. There are ordinances in the city that currently does not allow the sale of items along street and outside of permanent buildings. And certain establishments are exempt from this, so the ordinances are listed on the slide. And so the recommended phase approach is to go with phase 1 right now, which is immediate opportunity. This would allow, of course, the cottage law protected foods to be sold through sidewalk vending, and what means by sidewalk vending is mobile, such as vending on foot or with a push cart, and be inclusive of a table or pop-up tent in appropriate areas. And what's being recommended is to start this through a pilot program. And this would be piloted in a specific designated area. We have been collaborating and will continue to collaborate with the different departments and partners to help support the pilot program. And possible areas here include either the Buena Vida neighborhood, which a lot of the work was done in the Buena Vida, the engagement, or the Current Choice Neighborhood International Southmost Planning Grant. We're currently in a 2-year process for that, so that would be another good location, or downtown Brownsville Performing Arts Academy. And then the next phases would follow afterwards. Phase 2 would be piloting the non-cottage law food vending, and then phase 3 would be legalizing the vending of non-cottage law foods citywide. So recommended next steps is to return to the City Commission based on the support here and questions and feedback so that we can amend the ordinances, and then sections 22.1, sections 22.126, and 86.7, and then provide an awareness campaign and implement the pilot program. And then at the conclusion of the pilot program, we would come back to City Commission with a report of the outcomes, including observations and recommendations before the next phases. So with that, are there any questions or feedback? Thank you. Definitely let us know if there's a specific area or any questions.
Do you have any feedback or questions from the commission?
I would definitely want to see what proposals are being made with regard to change in ordinance, because this opens up a lot of questions for me with regard to ensuring the safety of foods that are going to be sold for consumption in our community. So that's something I'd be interested in looking at.
Yes, of course, Commissioner. We'll lay out the ordinances. The ones that are laid out are tied to the businesses. It's more on the sidewalk vending. And the first phase would be cottage law foods, which are currently allowed. But we'll definitely lay those three out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Our next item is consent agenda items 1 through 4.
We have any motions?
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Our next item is public hearings. Item 1, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2022-1699 to annex into the city of Brownsville boundary limits a property described as being 30.065 acres out of 160.749 acres out of the north portion of tracts 1 through 10 in shares 1 and 17 Espiritu Santo grant out of a 3,030.24 acre tract, volume 941, page 29, deed records, and out of a 525 acre tract in quitclaim deed dated March 1st, 1978, conveyed to Rio Bravo Properties Incorporated, recorded in volume 1117, page 324, deed records of Cameron County, Texas, located near the intersection of New Carmen Avenue and U.S. Military Highway 281, Brownsville, Texas, 78520, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. I know some of these can be pretty long. I appreciate that. Mayor and Commissioners, it's nice to see you all. I feel so far away, but I'm glad to be here. I'm here substituting for Rick and Martin. So moving on, before you today, we have a voluntary annexation by a developer, Herb Union Design Developers. They are requesting annexation. The subject property is approximately 30 acres. The proposed use for the subject property is a single-family subdivision. That area in yellow that you see there, thank you, is approximately 30 acres, as I mentioned before, and some of the surrounding uses are just vacant land and institutional, which is Veterans Memorial High School there on the west. So yeah, so the subject property itself is 30 acres. Right now, we don't have any plat submitted. It's preliminary at this moment. Based on this information provided, staff recommends approval of the annexation as presented.
I'll move to approve.
Public hearing.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Oh, motion to close. Well, is anyone here for on?
Yeah.
If not, then I'll move to close the public hearing.
Aye.
And I'll move to, oh, sorry. I'll move to approve the annexation.
Aye.
Your mic is off.
Yeah, no, I just realized that. Thanks. Mic, please.
Are you the mic, please?
What was that?
Item 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-003 to rezone from agricultural AG to residential suburban R2 for an approximate 13.9 acres and residential transition R3 for an approximate 2 acres, all out of Lot 6, Block 105, El Jardín subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at the intersection of South Dakota Avenue and Dockberry Road, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A, District 1, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. So here we have a zoning request for dual zoning. The applicant is requesting R2, which is residential suburban for the north portion, the north 13 acres, as Ms. Morgan mentioned, and R3 residential transition for the south 2 acres. So the applicant is proposing to have a mixed use of single family on the north side and multifamily on the south side. This in front of the commission today is the buffer map. This shows mailouts that were sent out. We had a total of 27 mailouts. We did not receive any opposition. The current zoning for this property is ag for agriculture. Here you can see that in this slide, the majority of the zoning there is agriculture. As I mentioned earlier, the north portion there is going to be R2 for single family and R3 at the bottom, which is multifamily use. Here we have a street view of the property, currently all vacant with the exception of the South Texas electrical grid. There's a bird's eye view of the subject property. You have mobile home parks to the north. You have idea towards the south and vacant land in the east and west. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning request as presented, and I'm available to take questions at this time.
Is there any questions?
Is it my imagination, or is that a known flooding area that has flooding issues?
I'm not aware of flooding issues for this specific area, but I will say that this is a property that will have to go through the subdivision process, and it's going to have to be reviewed by the development review team. So issues with flooding can be addressed through the plating process.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here on this item? Okay, we have a motion to close?
Second.
Do I need a motion? So moved.
Motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, do we have any motions on the item?
Move to
I'll
approve.
move, yeah, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
No.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 3, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-010 to rezone from agricultural AG to residential transition R3 for a 10.61 acre tract of land, more or less out of Block 3, Chicago Garden Subdivision, Share 28, Espiritu Santo Grant, Cameron County, Texas, located near the intersection of Southmost Road and South Minnesota Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A, District 1, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Thank you. So the applicant is requesting to rezone the subject property from Ag District to R3 residential transition for multifamily development. The property is located along South Minnesota and is approximately 10.6 acres. Here we have the buffer map showing the mailouts that we sent out. We sent out a total of 5, and we did not receive any opposition. The aerial view showing most of the surrounding areas are single-family and vacant land. Here we have the zoning map showing the property zoned as ag. Most of the area, as I mentioned earlier, is already zoned agriculture, but you can see the development trend on the west side. It's R3 on the west, and some commercial headed towards the east there, and we're seeing that in development trends. So this is why we're getting that rezoning request. And here's a bird's eye view of the subject property. Again, as I mentioned, most of the surrounding uses right now of the immediate area are vacant land and the single family to the east and the south. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the zoning request as presented. I'm available for questions at this time.
Is this where they want to do the senior living, a project that they pitched like a month or two ago?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Is this where they wanted to do the senior living project that they pitched a month or two ago?
I haven't received any plans for it yet. I'm not aware of this exact location, but we don't have anything on file for that, as far as submitted site plans or anything.
This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here on this item?
Motion to close? Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Motion to approve? Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
I have a conflict with agenda number 4, so I'm going to step out, but I'll leave the conflict of interest form.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Item 4, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2022-901 to rezone from light industrial LI to corridor commercial CC for 60.68 acres of land comprised more or less of Lot 3, Block 1, Lavon subdivision, 1.78 acres out of Lot 2, Golden Corral subdivision, Johnson Brothers subdivision, Lot 1, EJ subdivision, Boca Chica Plaza subdivision, Espiritu Santo Grant Share 19 Work Center, 200 by 300 foot tract 24, 1.3760 acres, Zogos subdivision, La Frontera subdivision, Espiritu Santo Grant Share 19, CT 30 front 0.3440 acres, Espiritu Santo Grant Share 19, 0.334 acres, tract 30 Paredes partition, Lot 2 Drennan Man subdivision, re-subdivision of Man building and land subdivision, Lot 1, Block 1, 1.430 acres, security subdivision. Pizza Hut number 2 subdivision, and United Plaza subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located near the intersection of Boca Chica Boulevard and Security Drive, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A, District 1, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Commission, this is actually a city-initiated rezoning that we're bringing to you before today. The property right now that you see in red is zone LI for light industrial. We're requesting to downzone it from LI to CC, corridor commercial. Staff has been getting a lot of inquiries about these properties, a lot of interest in them, and staff feels like the best suited zone for these properties is corridor commercial. The trends in that area along Boca Chica are mostly corridor commercial. As you move further south, we understand there is a need for industrial, but this particular area we feel best is suited for corridor commercial. As I mentioned, we're hearing feedback from the public and from developers that their proposed uses fit best in the corridor commercial zone. We did send out a total of 96 mailouts and we did not receive any opposition. So here we have the zoning map of the subject property. As I mentioned, most of the properties on the north side of Boca Chica are corridor commercial. That section there in red is what's being proposed to downzone to light commercial. The property owners and the surrounding property owners at 200 feet did receive notice of the rezoning. Like I said, we didn't receive any opposition, but a lot of those uses there are mostly general commercial uses. So this is why we're requesting commission consider the downzoning from LI to CC, corridor commercial. Here we have a bird's eye view of the subject property. I know you guys are familiar with the area, but you know there's a Burger King, an AutoZone, a True Fit. So those are the general commercial areas along with Boca Chica there in that area that we're asking the commission to consider going from LI to CC. The Plan and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning request as presented, and I'm also now available to take questions.
Did you receive any feedback? I know you received no opposition, but did you have any feedback from any of the property owners?
We did not.
Okay.
No. As I mentioned, a lot of the uses there already fit into the corridor commercial.
Right.
Will anybody be affected?
I'm sorry?
Will anybody be affected?
Not necessarily, because the uses that are there that we're rezoning are already allowed in CC and corridor commercial. We're not necessarily downzoning anybody that's already using LI.
Yeah, that was the question. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, so it's a public hearing? I'll make the motion to close public hearing.
Well, I just want to make sure that there's nobody here. Is there anybody here on this item? Okay.
I don't see any people from Boca Chica here. I'll make the motion to close public hearing.
We have a motion to close and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Somebody go get Commissioner Galansky from the parking lot.
Is she out here?
Item 5, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2022-235.98 to amend the Unified Development Code to revise all references made to the 2013 Bicycle and Trail Master Plan to the Bicycle and Trail Master Plan, as shown in Exhibit A, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
So this is not a zoning case for the commission. This is actually an amendment to the Unified Development Code, the UDC, that was adopted by commission at the end of 2020. Specifically, the only thing that we're revising is any mention or ties to the 2013 Bicycle and Trail Master Plan. And the reason for this is just because as the Bicycle and Trail Master Plan gets updated or revised, we just want to make sure that we're in line with the latest and greatest. As you can see, the screenshot specifically dates the 2013 Bicycle and Trail Master Plan, and all we want to do is remove any reference to the 2013 number. And that's all that we're doing and requesting before the commission today. And Planning and Zoning did recommend approval of the ordinance amendment as presented.
Good. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission?
Yes. This is curiously coming on the heels of concerns that we've raised about people who have property with waterfront that before they could have sold as waterfront property, but now they have to provide an easement to the city for the construction of trails. If we adopt this, then as I interpret it, anytime we modify the plan, which doesn't require a first and second reading or public hearing, then that's going to affect property owners' rights, won't it?
Commissioner, I can answer that. The current 2013 has that already. And so by taking no action, we still have that in the plan itself. Folks will still have to comply with property along the resacas.
But the plan could be changed without a first and second hearing and public hearing, correct?
Yes, but it comes to this board. It comes back to the commission.
But the public would not have the right to speak on it if we don't allow them to, correct?
Correct.
That's my point.
Well, I have a question, Joel. There is no provision that I'm aware of within the plan that takes waterfront frontage all the time from all property owners with an easement. There's specific situations, but it's not a blanket thing that's going to happen all over the city. Am I correct?
Correct. And right now, we're doing the legwork, and we'll come back to this commission to show what happened last time on the resacas, what staff is doing, and it's very selected areas that will have this instance.
Okay, and Commissioner, if I can add, that the 2013, as I think Joel had mentioned, has already been amended slightly. And then one last point is, and I know your contention about having public comment separate from a public hearing, but in those instances, anybody could come in and give their 3 minutes, say I'm opposed to the approval of this amended plan under the public comment portion. But I do understand the distinction.
And just for the record, yeah, my concern with that is when people come up for public comment, we listen or we don't listen, but there's no action taken. There's no exchange with them. As we're during a public hearing, there's a back and forth usually. So the citizens are not being afforded that, in my opinion, by going this route. That's my biggest concern with it.
Now, whenever there's a new proposed plan, I don't know how often that comes up, probably every few years, but whenever there's a proposed plan, is it kind of like a rezoning where property owners are notified of that new plan?
No, it's only when the development comes in that we let them know of the new requirements.
Okay, that might be a good idea, so that people actually know what's happening and they know whether it's going to affect their property or not.
Red is on.
Red is on.
Red is on.
They're new mics.
For them, red is on.
Yeah, the old one's green is on, the new one's red is on.
Yep. Yeah, red means it's hot. Okay, any other comments? Do we have anybody here that wishes to speak on this item? Okay, we have a motion to close.
So moved.
We have a motion to close public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Do we have any motions on the item?
Motion to pass.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay.
Nay.
Two nays.
Two nay. Three nays.
Okay. Commissioner Cardenas, Commissioner Los Santos, and who else?
Commissioner Tetra.
Commissioner Tetra, okay. We have 3 nays, 4 ayes. Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 6.
Thank you.
Public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2022-1701 concerning Chapter 102 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Utilities, and which provides for water and sewer rates and charges, amending sections of Chapter 102 to provide adjustments to rates, fees, and charges for water and wastewater services, to implement a rate plan, providing for a Resaca charge, setting a public hearing thereon, and providing a severability clause and effective date. Brownsville Public Utilities Board.
Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. This item was also discussed in the month of March and April with the city manager, his staff, and individually with the city commissioners. And we're looking at a series of water and wastewater rate increases and also a Resaca charge to go along with some grant money that we'll be receiving from the Corps and the Restore Act. And so we'll make the same presentation that you've seen before for the benefit of the audience. And if there's any questions on that, we'd be happy to answer. And Mike Perez, our CFO, is going to make the presentation.
Right, so Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners, the water and wastewater Resaca rate study has been in the works since January of 2020. The last rate increases for water and wastewater were in 2016 and 2014, respectively. That's 6 and 8 years ago. There are 3 factors that are driving the new multi-year rate plan. The first factor is that the current water wastewater rates are not covering the entire cost of service. The electric system continues to subsidize some of the cost. Second, we are experiencing increases in O&M costs at a rate of 2% or more per year, while revenue is increasing at a slower pace. And third, we have identified over $163 million in water and wastewater system capital improvements over the next 5 years, which will require some significant long-term debt. And the water wastewater utility will need sufficient revenues to cover the debt service. There are 3 issues that need to be considered in the rate design. First was to determine if the rates should follow a traditional rate design, which recovers the higher cost up front and then tapers down over the years, or a uniform adjustment which is constant throughout the plan. Second was a consideration as to whether to recover the Resaca cost through water rates or through a separate fee. And then third was consideration as to whether the Resaca cost should include only the Restore Program matching funds, or should it also recover the United States Army Corps of Engineers matching funds. We'll talk more about the grant opportunities in the next slide. So this is where we're going to spend most of our time here. So back on January the 13th of 2020, BPUB hired Wilden Financial Services to conduct the water and wastewater and Resaca rate study. The study initially yielded 4 options. The first 2 options rolled the Resaca costs into the base rates, and the last 2 options included a separate fee for the Resaca program. So the BPUB board approved the latter two options for city commission consideration. So both these scenarios have two components: the recovery of basic cost of service, whether it's through the higher rates at the beginning or uniform percentage increases over the years. The recovery of the basic cost of service is the same for both scenarios. The second component is a separate fee for the Resaca project. So the second component for a separate Resaca fee revolves around two grant opportunities. First, reflected under scenario one, is the Restore Act grant. So the Deepwater Horizon oil spill generated this revenue. So the TCEQ awarded the contract to BPUB for a total of $41.7 million to be phased out over 9 years. BPUB's local match is $5.4 million, or 13%. Now, the cost of service did determine that a separate Resaca fee of $2.50 per customer per month would recover BPUB's local match. So looking here at the average bill for an average 10,000 gallon water customer, we see that the water or wastewater monthly rate, current charges is at $69.09. By year one, it'll increase to $76.22, including the $2.50 Resaca fee. And by year five, the average bill goes up to $98.03. The second grant opportunity, which is reflected in scenario two. So scenario two recovers the Resaca cost under both grants, the Resaca and the United States Army Corps of Engineers matching requirements. So under the core grant, back in 2015, BPUB paid out $1.5 million to the Corps to conduct the Resaca study. And so a feasibility plan was identified with total cost of $183.6 million. This grant carries a 65-35 federal local matching grant. So the total federal share here is $119.3 million. This is the free money. And the local share is at $64.4 million over 16 years. So the local match is substantial, and it does result in a higher Resaca fee. So looking at the average bill under scenario two, we see that the current bill is at $69.09 for the average 10,000 gallon water customer. By year one, the average bill goes up to $78.22. The Resaca fee being $4.50, $2.50 for Restore, $2 under the Core. And by year five, the average bill goes up to $108.03. The Resaca fee being $2.50 for the Restore and $10 under the Core grant. Now, one thing I didn't mention was under the Restore grant, that covers the town Resaca, and the Core grant covers the Resaca de la Guerra and Resaca del Rancho Viejo. Here on page 6, we included a monthly residential charge comparison to other entities, just for reference. BPUB's average wastewater bill of $69.09 is significantly below the state average of $110.79, but higher than other neighboring cities. And we see that on the high end, we got Houston at an average bill of $166.75. Now, it is important to note that there's some major distinctions between BPUB and some of the other neighboring cities. One being that BPUB is a majority owner of the Southmost Regional Water Authority, an RO plant that produces more than 30% of the water needs for the city. And so the RO process is more expensive than traditional treatment of the river water, but it does provide resiliency, while other cities are dependent solely on the river. And second, the water system does support a Resaca program to the tune of about $1.3 million annual budget. So those two reasons are really why our average bill is a little higher than our neighboring cities. And so that concludes my presentation. Glad to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions or comments from the commission? And I think this item took the PUB board several presentations and several meetings to understand. So if y'all have any questions, it's definitely understandable. But if I can summarize it, we got some big grants, and those grants are matching grants. So in order to pay for it, you need to impose a Resaca fee. Otherwise, if those monies aren't raised, then the grants are lost. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I think if you looked at the rates with both grants covered in there, the 108 high number would still be under the state average. And that's with our base rates going up and the Resaca fees included, I think we're at 108. So that's still under the state average. It's higher than the ones in the valley, but as Mike said, there's some things we do in Brownsville other cities don't do.
Well, other cities don't have Resacas to maintain.
They don't have
most likely.
Resacas to maintain.
Just to expand on what the mayor said, it's not just taking advantage of grant money that's available. This is also work that's necessary to maintain our system, correct?
Absolutely. Okay. Yes. Ongoing.
And the recommendation from the PUB board is in favor?
I'm not sure, remind me, guys, because we went back and forth, Roy. I mean,
Okay.
seriously, like 5 times. And it was hard for them to grasp, so.
So you do have two options here, either scenario 1, recover and restore, or scenario 2 that recovers both grants. That's the first option. And then the second option will be to determine whether we want the base recovery increases to be under the traditional method, like the water percent increases at 8, 8, 6, 4, or 5, or whether the commission wishes to do a levelized rate increase of 6.3% across over 5 years. And that's just speaking in regards to the water.
But Commissioner's question, though, was what the PUB board recommendation was on this, and I honestly don't recall, because we did it so many times.
No, the board pretty much left it open for the city commission to.
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly, I think.
There you go.
I think certainly, from our standpoint, if you want my recommendation to make sure we ensure we get those grants, would be both, you know, the restore and the Resaca restoration, because.
So your recommendation would be scenario 2 then? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Scenario 2 with the water or the base recovery increases at the traditional.
Yeah, I think if you leave the rates that are a little bit variable, it really is that way to cover your CIP. If you levelize it, we're going to have to adjust our CIP levelized. So some of the things that were needed to maybe done earlier get moved out a little bit, but we still get to the same endpoint. It's just whatever we feel would be better for the customer. But that's why some are higher and some are lower in different years. The lower years, a lot of the CIP's already been done. The higher number, there's quite a bit in there for that year. That's what drove it.
Can you just repeat real quick how much money we get from Restore and USAC?
The Restore grant is at 41.7 million.
Million.
Our
with
local
an N.
match is 5.4 million, so 13% local.
And the other
The
grant?
rest is, and the other grant is 183.6 million total. 119 million of that is federal share.
And if we don't do this, then we don't get any of that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And
That's
that money
right.
has to be used specifically. It can't go back to cover payer rates or fuel service charges. It has to be
No, it's
specific needs.
It's for the Resaca.
That's fine.
Yep.
Just wanted to clarify.
Absolutely. We've got to guarantee that to those federal aid. I had a meeting, Renee and I had a meeting last Thursday, and it pretty much said, you know, folks, the money's coming, are you on board?
I understand that, but I
Yeah.
think it's important for people to understand.
Yeah, and we told them we would.
On that note, I think it's important for you to explain a little how bad our Resacas are right now. You had mentioned there's some parts, it's 3, 4, 5 feet, there's going to be, that's just.
Yeah, I mean, the Dean Porter was one we did initially. The Zoo Resaca was completely silted in. I think that's 4 or 5 feet deep now. The Dean Porter Park, in some cases, went 15 feet deeper than they were. And they just vary. They varied on the clay layers, but most of them are going to be anywhere from 8 to 15 foot deeper once the dredging occurs on those. But right now, they're pretty well. We were talking about one at Land O'Lakes today that's silted in a 1.5 feet deep or something. If we could lower that to 6 or 8 or 10 feet, we could improve a drainage problem Commissioner Tetreault brought to our attention. those kind of things. I mean, they're all pretty well silted in. The problem is when we get our river water that goes into those resacas, it's turbid. It's a lot of silt. By the time that water gets to Bayview, if you take that same river water and pump it to Bayview, you ever see the water in Bayview? It's crystal clear. The silt settles out along that path till you have much clearer water. Unfortunately, we get all the silt here. That's why these resacas are silted in so bad, and they're not up there. They're perfect.
Also, one of the benefits for the community of having these resacas dredged out is when we have an incoming hurricane, that allows us to lower the levels much faster, a lot lower, and that would allow us to retain more water in runoff. And so it just benefits the community as a whole. And so in the long run, it's actually a tremendous safety mechanism for our flood levels.
And there is a lot of drainage work in this resaca. It's just not dredging. It's a lot of gates and valves and flow structures that we don't have now that will do exactly, Commissioner, what you said. We can lower them quickly and raise them quickly if we had to.
But they're so full of sludge that
Full of
it's
sludge.
just, it's impossible in the condition they're in
doesn't-
right now.
We pull a few down right now in a hurricane event, but it pulls them down a foot or two instead of 10 feet. And that's a big difference for the city.
And how long would this take, the whole program, to get through?
Was it 15 years?
It's over 16, the
16.
course over 16 years to restore over 9.
No, I mean, how long would it take us to get the resacas done? 16 years?
16 years.
Wow.
And it's not going to be all the resacas, because like where I live, our resaca's not going to get touched. But I think it's still important. But one point I would like to make, and I don't think the grant money covers that, is if we can do an education campaign so that people can take responsibility and keep them clean. Because the tire dumping not only affects the resacas, but then it affects like the Impala pump station, which costs a lot of money whenever the tires get stuck in the water and stuff.
I mean, I think we could do that to PUB in conjunction with the city, regardless of the funding for the grants. We should do that anyways. That's something we can undertake.
But it is a really important project.
It's
and-
important. I know the Children's Museum does a good job with the children. The children get it. They understand it. Hopefully they teach their parents, but they understand it, and they work real well with us in the city on resacas. That's a big item for them.
Okay, any other questions or concerns?
I have a question. This resaca fee, is it going to be, will it have an end date, or is it going to be envisioned as a ongoing fee going forward?
I think it'll continue, well, we have to maintain these for what?
75 years.
75 years, the resacas, as part of the grant conditions. So that means you've got to have some ongoing work involved, and we should be fine with the amount we're requesting over that time frame. We should be able to maintain them very well. They won't silt in like these are silted in over 75 or 100 years. We're not going to be doing that. It's going to take a long time for them to get back to that state again. So, but yeah, it would continue on to the point of continual maintenance, particularly at least on the dredging part, which we would do. But our dredgers, we've got 2 or 3 we'll have, and keep the people busy.
So how would you maintain it? Because when I was on PUB, you only had like a 1 mile range. So will PUB have to hold a lot of land then to be able to go into the water and dredge after the project is done?
Yeah, we've got to get an access point. We've tried to buy up some property along some of these resacas that we can continually maintain, where we can get a dredger in and get our drying equipment in there.
Can you improve the 1 mile radius thing, or so that it's longer, or no? Is it still 1 mile?
Can we go longer?
We can definitely go longer, just by adding additional booster pumps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can take it longer. Yeah, it's better if you can stay in one location with the drying equipment and go as far as you can, because that's the big cost of moving that equipment and mobilizing.
This is a public hearing. Any other comments or questions? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here on this item? Do you have a motion to close?
I'll move
So
to
moved.
close.
Or second?
We have a motion and a second to close public hearing. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any motions on the item?
I'll move to approve the increase.
Which
Scenario
scenario?
1 or 2?
Yeah, scenario 2.
We have a
With-
motion.
With the variable rates?
Oh, geez, I didn't realize it. Yes. Yeah, I do think it should be gradual, or my preference is, yes, the variable rates.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners.
Thank you,
Good-
gentlemen.
Good project, and look forward to getting these things in. We couldn't do it without the commission helping on this. It's a big, big plus. Thank you.
We just wanted to make sure Renee's got plenty of work going forward.
He won't be able to retire for 75 years.
Yeah.
Item 7, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2022-1702 concerning Chapter 102 of the Code of Ordinance entitled Utilities, and which provides for electric, water, and wastewater, sanitary sewer service rates and charges, and conditions of services, amending Chapter 102 to provide for downward adjustments of electric service rates, fees, and charges, setting a public hearing thereon, and providing a severability clause and effective date. Brownsville Public Utilities Board.
Honorable Mayor, Commission, thank you again. This is the item we covered in the work session tonight on the electric rate adjustments that we talked about, and we're prepared to make a somewhat more detailed presentation than what we made in the work session for you. I'll turn that over to Mike.
Yes, good evening, thank you. So this is the same chart that we shared during the work session. The electric rate increases over those 5-year approved rate plan were at 36%, 22% bond issuance, and 14% the ongoing growth. Moving on here to the next slide. The goals for the base rate adjustments were to reverse the base rate increases that were related, of course, to the bond issuance. The rate design option is to revert back to the rates that were in effect on October 1, 2013. It was noted that it is appropriate to undo the bond issuance rates, but do need to consider the fact that the actual charge to the fuel will be going up as well. So the city does have the discretion as to how much of the base rate is appropriate. As mentioned earlier, it could be done in phases. Our financial advisor and our engineering consultant did recommend a phased approach. There is a risk or potential risk that the bond rating agencies will downgrade our credit rating. Now, the electric utilities 5-year capital plan does include $107 million in CIP projects over the next 5 years. Now, this does not include any generation asset. Okay, so out of the $107 million CIP, $76.9 million will be paid through cash, whether it's cash that we currently have on hand or cash that we will be transferring over the next 5 years through our CIP transfers. And then $30.3 million represents debt financing over the next 5 years. We do have sufficient debt capacity in the electric utility to cover the $30 million over the next 5 years. And then we wanted to make sure that future capital needs and ongoing cost escalations should be considered to avoid any future near-term rate increases. So we don't want to roll back the rates and then come back to the City Commission 2-3 years later requesting an increase. And so under Article 6 of the Charter, it required BPUB to periodically review rates, and then any changes will require a review. So as a result, we hired 1898 and Company, an engineering consulting firm, to conduct the review and determine whether BPUB would be harmed in any way with the electric rate rollback. So the study focused on the reduction of energy and demand charges back to the fiscal year 2014 levels. These are the rates that were in effect on 10/1/2013. So the study did reveal that an annual reduction in base rates would be in the tune of about $16.3 million. And of course, important to note that the city would lose $1.63 million in cash transfers. The annual CIP funding would be $79 million per year, which is adequate. And the debt service coverage would remain above the 1.25 times requirement. So now, if the rollback were to take effect, now looking at the chart, if the rollback were to take effect in May of 2022, we would see a reduction in revenue of $6.7 million, but we will still maintain a debt service coverage times of 2.15 times. That's reported here at the bottom. Now, in 2023 is when we start seeing the full revenue loss of $16.3 million, but it still affords us a 1.8 times debt service coverage, and then going down to 1.67 times debt service coverage by year 5. So still within or above the 1.25 requirement. Here on this page, we went ahead and included a sample residential bill, comparing the current state to the proposed average bill after the electric base rollback. So the bill calculations are based on the average 1,000 kWh user. So the electric bill design is made up of 3 components. We see here the customer charge for residential, it's at $6.94. And then second, we see the energy charge. We have a tiered approach, Block 1, Block 2. And then third is the fuel charge, which is currently set at 0.04055. So under our current scenario, our monthly average bill for that 1,000 kWh user is at $113.03. Now, under the proposed rollback or adjustment of the rates, we see the customer charge remains the same at $6.94. We see that the base rates under the energy charge, Block 1, goes down to the October 1, 2013 levels. So it's going from 5.4 cents down to 4.862 cents. And under Block 2, going from 7.688 cents to 5.964 cents. So we see a reduction in the base rates, but if you take a look at the fuel charge, we'll have to increase it back up to the actual cost, which at the time was at 5.245 cents. This will bring that average bill to $113.52. So even though we're doing the rate adjustment to the base rates, we are still seeing a minor increase of 49 cents in the average bill to that 1,000 kWh user. On this last slide, we went ahead and included a residential bill comparison to other investor-owned utilities, just to demonstrate that PB's electric rates do remain competitive. So the IUU average we see here, that's at $137.28. BPUB's average current bill at $113.03 is second lowest among the entities listed on here. So, and we do see here the highest being at $157, both for AMPIT and for TXU. That concludes my presentation. We got to take any questions?
Mike, so in the previous slide where the consultant, or maybe that one, did they also factor in the cost of the freeze last February of 21? Or
no,
like with the
those,
debt coverage and all that?
No, those were captured in fiscal year 21, so they're not included in 22 going forward. The only thing that we will see, though, going forward will be the payment of debt service, which will be principal and interest on the $35 million once we do convert it to long-term debt.
So will the debt coverage ratio be less than 1.67 maybe?
They're already factored in here, so the lowest that we'll see the debt service coverage ratio under the 5-year plan will be at a 1.67 times. So this includes that debt service.
Thank you. Oh, and when was, before 2012, 2013, when was the previous rate increase? Remember?
before the last 5-year rate increase?
Well, because the ones that came into effect between 2013 and 2016 were approved in 2012.
Correct.
So before that, how much time had passed since they had had a rate increase before that?
Monica, in 2011?
2011?
Printed something out. No, I don't have it with me.
So before they were having rate increases every 2 years? Or? But we haven't had one then in almost 10 years now, or 9 years, I guess? Or, oh no, the last one was in 2016.
Yeah, the adjustment took place. I mean, we did get some, we did have some ungrowth in 2016 at 4%. It's reflected in here. So that would have been the last rate increase for the electric, once we do the adjustment.
So have y'all factored in the possibility of needing it, or would you need a rate increase if it was before every 5 years to keep it steady so that it doesn't become a big bump?
Right, and that's why we had the review being conducted. And so it does reflect in here that we should be okay within the next 5 years.
And that's part of the reason you're recommending only going back 18% as opposed to the full 35% that you actually did increase back in 20.
Well, the bond issuance rate increases here, the 7, 4, 4, 4, and 3 totals 22%. So those 22% is what's being asked to adjust, to roll back. The 18% that's being referred to in here, the 18.3% decrease to the base rate revenue is reflective of the total gross. That's how much, by reducing it to 16.3 million, that represents 18% of the total gross revenue.
Okay. got
But
it.
yeah, the rates will be going back 22%.
Does this take into consideration the potential adjustment to the interest rates we pay and how that would affect capital improvement plans?
No, those were not factored in here. So if we were to get a potential downgrade in our credit rating, and so we end up with a higher interest rate, then it'll increase the expense and reduce the debt service coverage. Minor, but it'll be a reduction.
Okay, no one's asking for my opinion, but I'm going to say it. My concern is that this is really political more than sound business. This is something that was approved in 2012 and took effect between 2013 and 2016. I've never heard of a business rolling back its rates almost 9 years. And I mean, in the trainings that I would go to for PUB, they would tell us you should consider rate increases every 10 years to make it small and so that it doesn't hurt the customer as much. So going backwards is kind of hard to comprehend, but hopefully these consultants are correct in their assessment. I understand maybe some people's some people are upset that the Tenaska project didn't actually happen, but a lot of that money was spent back in subsidizing the fuel for the ratepayers. And so if people really go back and ask for their bills to compare them, like between 2013 and 2016, when the rate increases happened, they're not going to see these huge spikes that some people believe that they will. I also want to emphasize that just because it's a rate rollback, it doesn't, we've clearly stated here, and I think we need to say it loud and clear for everyone, it does not mean that your bill's going to go lower because of the fuel cost. So it sounds good, but it's not really going to have a very big effect for PUB customers.
Overall, I think the net bill is going to be pretty similar, and that's due largely in part, $12 of that is due to the new fuel charge. So the reason that this is even square or close to square is because of the fuel charge. But the way I see it is we needed to do, or we should, kind of put things to where they should be. The big reason for that is the fuel charge. We were subsidizing the fuel charge historically since 2013, 2012. Because the fuel charge went up so much, the PUB administration came to us and said that they could no longer subsidize the fuel charge based on the 16 million that was subsidizing it every year. So in any event, that the cost was going to go to the consumer one way or another, either through increased rates or passing that fuel rate on to the consumer, which most other utilities that do this do. So I think we need to put the fuel charge and pass that cost on directly to the customer, because that's what it is. If the fuel charge goes down in the future, then the bill will go down in the future. And then also, I mean, the way I see it is, there's been almost 10 years worth of rate increases for a project that is not going forward, and it's been several years that we've known that that project's not going forward. So to keep the rates where they are based on a project that's not going forward, I think is just not the right thing to do for ratepayers. I mean, yes, do we need to look at capital improvements and possibly generation and investments in generation in the future? Absolutely. But I think for now, this is about setting the fuel charges where they should be and rolling back the rates, a portion of what they were increased 10 years ago for a project that didn't go forward. That's the way I see it.
Commissioner Galansky, and I got where you were coming from when you're talking about rolling back rates, going back 9 years. How do you feel about the adjusting the fuel?
Oh, no, that's fair, because the price can keep going up, and PUB just can't afford it. But I find it disingenuous that here we are trying to roll back this is me talking real honest. We're rolling back the rates to pre-TNASCA, but we just took $10 million from the ratepayers, which were savings that PUB earned because they were able to sell for the benefit of the city. Yes, it's the benefit of the whole city, but that's also something, a win that maybe should have been passed on to the PUB customers. It could have been taken off their bill. So it's a double-edged sword, kind of.
And during our one-on-ones, gentlemen, I think I made my position pretty clear that I would prefer something like this come to us. And I know it's not your decision, but I would prefer something come to us like this come to us after we get the TNASCA audit. Because I think it would set the public's mind at ease. All questions can be answered at that point. And as I understand it, we're looking at a possible delay in that now. So I'm not comfortable moving forward with the rate adjustment at this point until I see the results of that audit.
How would the audit change anything though, Commissioner? Because it's mutually exclusive.
I do not know that. I don't know.
I can't not lower it knowing that the consumer's still going to continue to pay something that they shouldn't be paying.
But if by what you just have told us, the monies that we were collecting them from the higher rate, we gave right back to them in a fuel subsidy.
It was subsidized to the tune of $16 million a year. Not all of the money that was being raised from the higher rate was going back to the ratepayer.
Not all of the money? Where was the rest of it going?
Well, the TNASCA component of it was, we still had growth rate component in there that we used for growth. That's not going back. But the TNASCA component of it's going back. Not the part was for normal growth part that we didn't come to you to change. We need that just to keep going. That didn't get rolled back.
And there was surpluses too, which the balance of the subsidy or the balance of the surplus is the 29 million has been set aside to use somehow going forward.
Yeah, the 29 is intact. And as we talked about, using it for generation or underground or.
So to answer the mayor's question just a while ago, so we're generating, in this case, we're generating $16,300,000 from the bond issuance rates, right? The city shares 10% of that. That's $1,630,000. So the net that PUB is getting in cash is $14,670,000. We are budgeting $16 million to make the program whole. So we're having to contribute an additional $1,330,000 from current revenues to make up that 16. So the full 90% that we're generating from the bond issuance rates is going back to the taxpayers or to the ratepayers, along with the additional subsidy that PUB has been contributing.
The issue now is because the fuel charge is going to be adjusted and passed on to the consumer directly, if the rates aren't rolled back, then the bills are going to be significantly higher, right? In
Yeah,
other
I
words, the
think
only
we-
way to maintain the bill the way it is to roll back the rates.
Define significantly. What dollar amount are we talking about?
If you're
compared to
looking
the bill
here-
we're looking at?
Well, if you're looking at the one that we're looking at now, Commissioner, if you look at the fuel charge there is .04055. That's current 2022. If you look at the proposed 2023, the fuel charge is .05245, and that is 5245 as opposed to 4055. So you're looking at $12 a month. So that monthly bill on the top will be $113 now, but if it goes to the fuel charge that's anticipated on the bottom, then add that $12 to that $113, you'll be at $125.
Yeah.
$12.
I mean, just, this is all projections, it's all, I mean, it's speculative, right? And if the fuel charge goes down, well, then the bill would go down too.
So, yeah, that particular scenario would assume that we keep the Tenasca rates in place and we designate that money for a particular generation project. It's not being subsidized back to the customers.
And we charge the actual fuel.
Yeah, so at this point,
That, you would see a bill at 125.
it's either set the fuel charge directly to the consumer at what the fuel costs, but to do that, the bill's going to go up. So to offset it, you have to reduce the rates, or keep subsidizing it, which they've said is not sustainable, and leave the rates where they are.
Well, I don't think anybody's advocating to keep subsidizing. I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could continue to subsidize the 16 million. What's not sustainable is the fact that the gas prices keep going up. So whereas years past, the $16 million would cover those spikes in the fuel cost, now we're seeing, in this particular year, we saw the 16 plus an additional $13 million shortfall. And that's why the bill's now at 113, going from 102 to 113, is to make up that additional shortfall of 13 million. But the 16 million was still going back to the customers.
I had my one-on-one earlier, and I've been here from the beginning, since day one, when Tenasca was first presented. And I remember sitting in the Cueto building with the PUB board when you all presented it to us.
I wasn't appointed yet.
The first time. And it dragged on for a long time. It wasn't like a done deal the first time. It took a while, good while. And the one thing that I remember asking, I had so many questions, and it was these rate increases were going to continue going and going, and it just was like, why? And I had so many questions, and I would just be told, you know, this is a good thing for Brownsville. We need this power consumption, and nothing will ever come if we don't have it, and you don't understand, and so explain it to me. It was just one of those things, like, you don't understand, but nobody would explain it. And so I remember being so embarrassed. Somebody just please explain it to me. And that's when I just had this feeling, like, if they won't explain it, something is wrong. You just want me to pass it, but you won't tell me why. And that's when it was wrong from the get-go. And I understood the concept, and I did all the research that I could, but just something felt wrong. And I understood the concept, but something sat wrong with me.
Did you vote against it?
I didn't even vote on it. And so, and by the way, I'm speaking. I have the floor.
Yeah, okay, but
So-
just clarify also that I was not appointed until after the rates
I'm
were approved.
speaking, thank you. So, as it goes on, it gets approved, and the ratepayers start, the rate increases begin, and there's all these questions, and it's coming in a year, it's coming, and the rates just start going up and up and up, and there were hard times, and the recession, and it was just crazy, crazy times, and it was so hard for Brownsville, the unemployment rates, and it was hard. But the moral of the story is, the ratepayers really went through a lot, and it never came. So all I ask the commission is that it was a blunder, and I ask that you really, really, really do the right thing by the ratepayers. Yes, we did subsidize the fuel, and I feel like that does make up a lot for it. I feel like it's been passed on for so long. A lot of the people that didn't look into it properly are now gone, and the voters have done right by that. They've done right by themselves for that. I feel very strongly they've done that. But I feel a lot of you all have had to deal with things that you didn't get yourselves, like you weren't responsible for it and you've had to deal with it. But all I ask you is that you really, really advocate for these ratepayers that have been through so much and just do the right thing by them and make sure that they are compensated for what they've been through at the end of the day. With the best that we can do is what we should do for them. That's all I ask for. Just because I've seen it from day one and been through, I get it. I've been there. I've seen it. I've been treated badly. I've been spoken down to. This is what I get when I try and tell my side of the story. I get spoken down to. And all I'm trying to ask is for fairness and to be fair and to be honest and to be open and to be transparent. And I feel like the ratepayers deserve that as well. And I feel like they get treated like that too. Just be right, do the right thing. That's all I ask.
Any other comments or questions? We're still in public hearing. Okay, is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? We have a motion to close?
So moved.
We have a motion and
Second.
second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, do we have any motions on the item? I'll go ahead then. I'll make the motion to go with the recommendation of the PUB board and roll back the rates as discussed here by Mr. Brusiak and Mr. Pettis. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I'll just say one thing in with regard to Commissioner Tetru's request, and I understand where you're coming from. But doing right by the taxpayers and always just lowering your bill. It's also about what we're delivering and are we setting ourselves up to be able to continue to deliver even through the toughest times. And that's why we know costs go up sometimes. So I don't agree that the right thing is always cut. That's where I am on this. And like I said, there's additional information I'd like to see before this had come before us.
Any additional discussion?
I'd just like to add, this should have been done a long time ago. When Stenesca wasn't a viable project, we shouldn't have been charging for something that the ratepayer wasn't getting. This will make the bill a lot more transparent. I mean, I have a hard time understanding my bill, but I think this will help things. Obviously, if gas prices go down, the ratepayer gets relief, whereas in the past, if they weren't getting relief. And it also protects PUB in the future from having to generate a shortfall when gas prices go up.
Well said. Any additional discussion?
I'll say I'm going to vote for the rollback, but simply because I'm really hoping that the consultants' projections are correct and that you're able to continue with your capital project plans and pay off the debt from the February freeze without it affecting the bond ratings and all that.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If the rollback, you vote on it tonight to roll it back, are you rolling it in 1 year or over?
That's a good question. Thank you. I believe the recommendation, I mean, I would prefer to do it all at once, but I believe the recommendation has been to do it over the course of 2 years. So my motion would be to do it over the course of 2 years unless any Commissioner Cowan has an issue with that. No? Okay, that's, thank you for asking for that. Thank you.
Did Commissioner Gowan accept that?
Yeah, you were the one who seconded over here.
Okay, we have the motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
We have 1 nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Our next item is items for individual consideration. Item 1 is consideration and action to update the hotel occupancy tax and audit recommendation for the hot audit team for Camille Players Incorporated, Communications and Marketing. And Mayor, I've been told that there is no action needed on this item.
Okay, so if we don't take any action, will
It's,
it come up?
it's just withdrawn by the city, so no action's required,
We can put it back on the agenda next meeting if necessary?
if you want to.
Okay, I'll just defer to them. All right. Thanks. So there'll be no action then on item 1?
Item 2, consideration and action to approve an interlocal agreement with the Rio Grande Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization to accept a one-time contribution of $150,000 for a transit study, multimodal transportation.
Mayor, City Commission, good afternoon. Joel Garza, Multimodal Transportation Director. We have today an item for you to accept a donation or contribution for $150,000 for our next phase of the transit plan. As you're aware, we did a 2017 study. A lot of the items that in there have already been complete or are ongoing right now. And so the route realignment, the frequency, bar shelter improvements, that alone will be here next meeting to approve, or for y'all to approve 30 shelters to be purchased. And so that will be in the next meeting, Sunday service, and then the partnerships. And so I think we're ready for the next phase. What does that mean now that we completed that study? And so thanks to the RGV MPO and Mr. Andrew Cannon, their executive director, for contributing this. And so what we'll do, we'll now analyze the existing conditions. We'll obviously see what the public needs and wants are, and then develop some standards. And so staff recommends approval of this contribution.
I've been here a really long time, and I've never gotten a gift that I can remember from the MPO. So I am happy to motion to accept the gift from the MPO.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I just have one question. How long is it going to take for the study?
This will be part of the mobility plan, which is already ongoing. And so it will have the same timeline. This should be ready by next summer.
Okay. Any additional discussion? All right. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, consideration and action to approve the last one-term option for contract ASC-14-1218 Air Service Development Consulting Services with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley, Department of Aviation.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Francisco Partida, Special Projects Manager for the Brownsville-South Padre Island International Airport. We have Nicholas Hahn on the line. He is the Principal, Air Service Development for Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley. Nicholas, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay, so I'm going to just operate the presentation on his behalf.
Yes, thank you, Francisco. And this evening, I just wanted to review the last 12 months of our efforts with the airport, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about the entire length of our engagement. But in the last 12 months, we have worked with the airport to prepare business cases for air service development consulting meetings with over 25 different airlines at air service development conferences. So each of these presentations is based on a specific business case for the actual airline service to the Brownsville South Padre Island International Airport. Beyond that, we acquired and assisted with 4 additional airline meetings that were further advanced, discussions about service to the airport. And then further on that, 2 of those meetings progressed into calls with SpaceX, one of our largest corporate travel clients, and 2 target carriers that led to final stage discussions. But unfortunately, the parties were not able to come to an agreement to begin service at the airport. If you could go to the next slide, please. Additionally, we have worked with the airport and with the Greater Brownsville Incentive Corporations to understand the economic impact of potentially expanding air service to the airport. And that led GBIC to expand the Air Service Development Fund to a $3 million fund that could be utilized for air service incentives for a new entrant air carriers. Currently, we are in the midst of performing financial analysis on SpaceX's corporate travel spend and how a potential target carrier that we're working with would lower their overall travel costs and bring benefit to the community. We're also in the process of performing a data catchment study that we will integrate into our future airline business cases. So a catchment study looks at the origination and termination of passengers regardless of airport utilized. It's very important information when we're dealing in a multi-airport area such as our market because today with the lack of air service, a lot of passengers that should be utilizing Brownsville are utilizing Harlingen. And so this catchment study allows us to provide more information to carriers, which is extremely important right now given the uncertainty in air travel demand that is resulting from the pandemic. And then just additionally, we continue to advocate to the airlines on your behalf every opportunity that we have. And a lot of that is informal conversations that we'll have through the course of our interactions with those airlines. So we've enjoyed working with the airport and we look forward to continuing that relationship.
It is the airport staff recommendation to exercise the option to renew the contract. It is the last year of a 5-year contract, and then next year we can go out for RFPs and put this out on the street again to be competitive.
Are they're the ones responsible for bringing in new airlines?
We're doing everything that is in our power.
Did they bring in any airlines last year? Did they bring in any airlines last year?
The conversations were very advanced. We got to the table, the negotiation table, where GBIC and SpaceX and the airport took part, but there was no agreement, unfortunately.
Do we have any questions? Okay. Is there any motions?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I'm opposed. Nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you.
I'm going to vote nay too.
Item 4, consideration and action to approve the last one-year term option contract for PES-67-117, Professional Architectural and Engineering Consulting Services with Javiation, Department of Aviation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Brian Walker with the Airport Department. Tonight, we're going to be doing a presentation. I'll hand it off to Jeffrey and Travis with Javiation. This is another contract that the airport has for on-call services for architectural engineering services. And I'll go ahead and let me verify they're here. Jeffrey and Travis, are you on?
Jeffrey is. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I'll go ahead and pull up the presentation.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Take it away.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, and we just wanted to take a moment and introduce ourselves again. I'm Jeffrey Hogan with Javiation. We've been working with Brownsville since 2018, and we want to take a moment to talk about a little about what we do as airport engineers. And as you can see in this slide, Javiation is a firm we work with the FAA and to obtain state and local funding and federal funding. We're an architectural group and that specializes specifically on airports. That's what we do. I mean, we work on airports. As you can see, the runway and the terminal and the parking lots and the tower from all across the board. What we do is specialize in airport, from construction management, from coffin to grave. We work with the FAA and the airport to establish that project from the CIP process clear through till it's built, and we call it cradle the coffin. We understand the process, and that's what we've been doing for quite a few years with Brownsville. And you can see some of the fruits of the airport out there, not only us, but with Garver and the other consultants that have been working. You guys have a phenomenal facility out there. Your terminal is second to none, and I commend each and every one of you, Mr. Walker, Francisco, and the City Commission and Mayor on this facility. It really is a showpiece for your community. Next slide, please. So just as we look over this last 4 years since 2018 when we were selected, I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that we've done as a partner with Brownsville, with Mr. Walker out there in the city. First, as we came on in 2018, we were asked to establish a passenger facility charge number 8, which was to procure procurement with the FAA on collecting those passenger facility charges for about a cost of about $10.1 million to help the terminal facility and fund that. And also to help make the FAA happy, which is a goal of ours, is we closed out PFCs number 5, 6, and 7, which was key with them to meet the requirements and so forth. So as we work with the airport and the city, over the past 4 years, we've helped generate their seat capital improvement program. And this year we submitted here in March 2018 to the FAA $113 million CIP over the next 10 years. It's that advanced thinking that the airport has and the city has to help get that in the FAA's hands so they can start planning for that. Also, as we jump through there, we prepared a spaceport feasibility study in behalf of the city. And then we looked at I think the key things that we looked at, and one of the things I was proud of as an engineer, is we inventoried all your airport pavements out there. We walked every one of them to see what's happening with them, what the conditions they are. Then we developed a plan to present to the FAA. And currently, one of the things that was determined, we're currently working on the reconstruction of runway 1836, which we're currently designing and looking to bid August of 2022, how we can have bids in hands for the FAA so they can make them successful in what they're wanting to do. And as we talked quite a bit about the FAA, Mr. Walker, next slide, it's really FAA is a key stakeholder in Brownsville. As you can see by your terminal, with their help and assistance and your guys' hard work, you're able to develop and bring forth that snapshot of what you see for the future of Brownsville, and you got that in the terminal. Well, it continues to move forward at this point. That partnership is key. And so, as I mentioned, we did submit a CIP for them, but we keep working with that. And the forms of funding that we're looking with the FAA is 3 different types. Airport Improvement Program, which is called AIP, a Passengers Facility Charge, which are PFCs, which we established when we got there. And then here recently with the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, these are the additional fundings that are available to the airport through FAA. Now, 90% of those are federal that's contributed to the airport and 10% local match. So with that CIP and working together as a team and a partnership, we're able to help capitalize on the funds that the FAA has. And with Javiation, we have that ability. We have folks that have worked with the FAA in the past that understand how the CIP process works to move forward and get Brownsville in the best position. Now, part of that we need to do is follow the selection process. What you're doing is following their proper guidance in, following the grant assurances, and that's selection of consultants. And typically our contracts are federally based. They're through you, but funded by the FAA, which is a 90% federal cost to 10% local. And then everything that we do is reviewed by FAA and approved by you, as well as the FAA, to make sure everything is following good faith efforts and in good standing with the FAA. Now I like to look at it as a 3-legged tool. The FAA, the City of Brownsville, Javiation, and the engineers, we work together as a team to help bring past the dreams that you have out there. And one of them has been the terminal, and as we move forward, the development of the airport. honestly, I've enjoyed working with Bryant and Francisco over the past 4 years, and they're great folks. You have the best of the best there. And, not only do I look forward to this 1 year, but many years into the future to working with Brownsville and the city of Brownsville and help capturing your dreams and maintaining your airport. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments from the commission? Okay, do we have any motions?
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is executive session, and I'll read the item. Item 1, closed session pursuant to Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code to deliberate the appointment, employment contract, and duties of the city auditor and discuss related legal issues with the city attorney under Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, City Attorney's Office, and Organizational Development and Human Resources Department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to executive session. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, we'll recess to executive
Mayor.
session. Thank you.
Could we introduce the new Assistant Director for the airport?
Sure.
Okay, please, Sean, if you'd come up. This is Sean Kelly. He's just joining us. Yesterday was his first day. This is his first commission meeting, so he's thrilled to be here. Go ahead.
I'm very pleased to be here. It's actually something very exciting for me in my career. So everyone here has been very welcoming, and I'm glad to be a part of the Brownsville community. Thank you.
Welcome, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is now 7:28 p.m., and the City Commission of the City of Brownsville is going into executive session. Okay, Mayor, it is 7:40 PM and we're back in open session. I'll read the next item. Possible action on any items as discussed in executive session. Item 1, consideration and action, if any, related to the appointment, employment contract, and duties of the city auditor, Organizational Development and Human Resources Department.
Mayor and City Commissioners, based on discussion in executive session, it's my recommendation that the City Commission entertain a motion authorizing city staff to continue negotiations as discussed in executive session. If it's the Commission's desire to do so, I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion
Motion to
passes.
adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Stand adjourned. Thank you.
Good night.
There being no further business to come before the commission, upon duly made motion, the meeting has adjourned at 7:41 PM.